going to talk about mood medicine and beating the winter blues. It's very interesting. We had the same class the other day on Saturday, and we almost canceled the class because the weather was so rotten. But I think the rotten weather was in our favor because we had quite a few more people than we did today. So today it's nice and sunny outside, so people aren't worried about beating the winter blues. But I'm really honored to have Tennille Neff with us today. She is an art therapist and psychoanalyst. You want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Art therapist, psychoanalyst. I have a small private practice here in Branson, right off of Highway 248. Just a little past the turnoff for Yakhouse Theater. I've been here about 2 years. And prior to that, I was in New York City for about 13 years, practicing in Manhattan.
So we're excited to do all this together. Go ahead. So we're going to talk about the blues and the blahs. Why is it so important this time of year to talk about the blues and the blahs? Well, several reasons. One big reason is there's less sunlight this time of year than other times, and so people get less vitamin D. And then you compound that with the fact that it's colder, people don't like to get out as much, sometimes the ice affects it, people are just kind of afraid to walk outside. One biggie, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but over the holidays people really get a lot of sugar intake. And so I don't know if you knew it or not, but Christmas is not December 25th anymore. I don't know if you got that memo, but Christmas is the entire month of December. Okay? And so when do the goodies start pouring into your life, right? They pour in pretty much the whole month of December and into the new year. So I can watch it with my patients to see their mood is definitely affected by sugar. It's funny, we talk about children all the time having sugar, at least my wife and I do, and the impact that it has on their behavior. But you better believe it has an impact on adults. Okay? It really does. And then the last thing here, cumulative effect of SAD, S-A-D. It's not mnemonic that stands for Seasonal Affective Disorder. And interestingly, Standard American Diet. Standard American Diet is SAD. Okay?
So from a psychological perspective, there are also other reasons that this time of year is particularly hard for people. Seasonal affective disorder, which Dr. Wayne talked about, which affects a vast majority of the population. And there are people who live in communities like Seattle or England that experience seasonal affective disorder all year round because they don't get much light. Then there's the unmet expectations. There's the holidays, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, and people have a lot of expectations around that time of year. They also have a burden of stress put upon them. Then there's financial stress, right? It hits your wallet. It's not easy to come up with all the money to buy everybody gifts and go out to eat with family and host gatherings. And then there are those of us who are far away from our families and live in other states, or those of us who have lost loved ones. Right around the holiday time, it's when you really start to feel the ache and emptiness of the people who've left the world and gone other places, and so it can be really lonely. Then, of course, if you live near your family, like I do, dealing with your family is also stressful. You get caught into the same old roles and patterns, the ones you don't like, but you just fall right back into over and over again with family members. And then there's difficulty coping with the demands and expectations of others. If you have children, grandchildren, my son, Mommy, I want the Ninja Turtles, Mommy, and also those of us who are caretakers in our lives, we're looking out for people's emotional needs as well as buying them gifts and taking care of them. And this time of year, especially after the New Year's, is a time where people reflect on their year. Right? We think about what was last year, what do I want to do differently? And probably around February is when we realize we're not doing things differently. We were ready to do it, we wanted to do it, and we fall back into the same old habits. So that can really lead to a disappointment in ourselves.
So today we're going to talk about understanding your brain, kind of for dummies. some of the diagnostics, how to assess your brain and where you're weak. The brain is an organ. It's important to remember that. You know, if your pancreas wasn't functioning well, you might take some nutrition to affect your pancreas. You might eat protein more often. You really watch your sugar. So that just like the pancreas is an organ, the brain is an organ. Are there things that your brain likes? Absolutely. Fish oil, most people know that. Frequent protein is also good for the brain because it upregulates every single neurotransmitter. So that's important for brain function. Do try this at home. We want you to try it at home. These are practical, easy tools to beat the blues. And then foods that make you feel like living. I had a lady come in yesterday. It was kind of interesting, and I was talking to her about what we might do to make her feel better. And she got the idea rather quickly that I was going to maybe start addressing some of her dietary habits. And she said, well, I'm 75 years old. That's all I have left is my food. So I thought about it since, and I get where she's coming from. I understand that. So don't take away my sweet tarts and all those things that I really, really love, and they feel good on my tongue. But I bet if I dug a little deeper with that lady, I wish I had, I would have found that maybe not right at that moment, but in the next 24 hours, she was having a slump of some sort. A mental slump, energy slump, whatever, because it happens to everybody.
So, I'd like to do a little creative exercise to help us get to know each other and also to bring a little art therapy into the talk today and get your participation. So what I'm going to do is I have these cards, and this is something I use in my office frequently. They're called O cards, and they have pictures on them. And what I'd like to do is I'd like for each of you to just pick one card that resonates with you. It can be anything. And then you're going to use that card to introduce yourself. So I'll put some cards on each table. And if you don't find a card in that deck that you like, switch with your neighbor and maybe you can find one. Now, please be aware that some of these are a little dark. I am a therapist, you know. So some of us think there's all kinds of emotions and things represented, so please don't be offended by any of them.
So we'll give you a little time to do this, to pick your card, and then we'll come back to this exercise. Next slide.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about conscious versus unconscious mind. Recent studies in neuropsychology have been proving over and over again that a large portion of our behavior is in our motivation resides in our unconscious. So it's outside of our awareness. And a good example of this, and all of you I'm sure will be familiar, is when you know the right things to do, right? You know what you could do to make things better in your life, or you know this area that you need to improve in. But every time you try to improve, you can't. It's like the old pattern gets a hold of you. Something outside of your control grips you, and you fall into the same thing over and over again. That's the unconscious. And the unconscious is in control of almost all of us. I mean, there's even people who have been through years and years of therapy still have to deal with their unconscious mind. But one of the jobs of therapy is to try to get into that place and to understand yourself. One of the roles of art therapy is to do that as well. And so when Dr. Wayne is talking about health and nutrition and exercise, we have Monica here, so she's our exercise guru. This is what stops you, right? The unconscious. You know you need to go to the gym. You know you want to eat that salad instead of that candy bar, but you can't stop yourself, and that's because of the unconscious.
Very good. So we're going to talk, I'll give you about 5 more minutes to find your card here. We're going to talk about how to bolster your brain health. So my observation when I work with people is that when most people come to me, they are neurotransmitter deficient. They're hormonally weak, nutritionally depleted. They are living in a famine in the midst of plenty, so to speak, in this good old US of A, where our supermarkets are the size of football fields and our refrigerators are just a little bit smaller than that. I like to use the analogy of an overdrawn bank account because everybody gets it. So a bank account, when you're overdrawn, you get letters from the bank, right? Maybe letters from your creditors. And we don't like to get those letters. So what happens when we're depleted nutritionally is our body starts to talk to us and send us letters. And it says, Mary Jo, your knees hurt today, don't they?
No.
And it says, Dr. Tompkins, your low back is bothering you a little bit today. Or it might say, Jane, your stomach is really bothering you today. So you get these messages. Something is not right. So the body talks in symptoms. And so the first thing we have to do when people come in many times, rather than take them by the shirt collar or their shoulders and shaking them and saying, you just got to get your life together. Not that there's not a place for that, I'm not saying that. But sometimes we have to get them nutritionally replenished first before I can even venture into the idea of lifestyle change. So these are some of the things that happen when our bank account is deficient. All right. So I want you to think about things a little different today. We usually talk about these diagnoses like ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, OCD. We tend to think about these things as a sentence. Okay, I have OCD. I have depression. So that's who I am. Or me, I'm Eeyore. I'm just pretty much depressed all the time, and nobody really cares too much. Well, there's something we can do about it. And we don't have to wear that label. We don't have to wear that diagnosis. So I'm just going to go over some steps here on how we strengthen the brain. All right. So the first thing we do is we strengthen the hypothalamus. One of the things that's exciting to me when I practice is I love to treat things that affect many other things. So if you wanted to fix the leak in your sink, would you wipe the water off the floor as a fix? No, that would be fixing kind of the symptom. It would make it look better. It would make you feel like the sink was fixed, but it's not really fixed. Going upstream of a problem fixes many, many things. So the hypothalamus in the brain is a small place where the hormones and the nerves communicate back and forth really, really powerfully. And so it's amazing when you strengthen that area, all of a sudden, a month later, people come back and their digestion is better. Their motivation is better. Their acid reflux is improved. Things that you never would have thought are affected by that area because it's so far upstream. It runs so many things. Okay? How do we do it? Use specific glandulars, essential fatty acids, and so forth. All right, is this a good time? Does everybody have their card now? Pretty good? But Camille, you go ahead and...
Okay, so what I'd like you to do, if you feel comfortable, if you don't want to talk, I understand. But just hold up your card, give us a little description of what's on it, because some of us are sitting far away and it won't be that easy for us to see. And then just use your card to introduce yourself to the group. Does somebody want to start us off?
It's a rainbow, and this looks beautiful and colorful and good thing to look at in the winter. And my name's Barbara Cole. I've been here for a while. Married to a military man, my husband and father both lived all over, but live here and I live in Branson.
Thank you.
Well, of course I picked two. You said one, but my personality would be picked two because I couldn't figure out which one to pick. But mine is running and a go on a stoplight, the sign. Because I felt when I first found the running one, it seems like I'm always on the go. I am fitness here at Hawaii. My name's Monica. And my lifestyle is always on the go, which is health and wellness. But I don't know how to relax. So I have to learn how to sit back and relax. So I didn't follow the rules. I picked two, but go, run, there they are.
That's good.
There are no rules in art therapy. Thank you, Monica.
You're welcome.
I'll go next. My name is Rita Bruin, and I've been at Point Royale in Branson for 2.5 years. I picked 3. But they are all related. I picked the rain first because it always brings back memories of my childhood. Playing in the puddles after the rain. I love to do that. My favorite place to be is out in the garden planting, and of course without the sun you can't do that. So those are my 3.
Great.
I have a droplet that has a ripple effect. And my place in the world right now is a lot of things, but right now I have a role of raising 2 kids, and so I realize that every single thing I do influences them. So I just need to be watching my P's and Q's because there's little ones watching.
Good. That is good. All right, I'll go. There were a couple I could have, but this one is water in a glass. And you can go either, you know how you've been around people that, you say their glass is half empty or half full. I am a half full most of the time. Even though the water level goes down on occasion, I usually find ways to be optimistic about how can I get through the troubled times. And we all have them. If you say you don't, you're probably not telling the truth. And so anyway, that is one of my mantras is find a pathway out of what troubled times can bring you, and look up and not down.
And she does that. I can vouch for that.
You can.
Okay, I'm Pat Lambert, and I've known Mary Jo for 24 years, I don't know.
Since 1992.
25 years.
Yeah.
I'll vouch for what she just said. Mine is a picture of a nurse. It's one of my many careers. My first career, I was a registered nurse. And it probably describes my personality of being a caretaker and always wanting to take care of people and help people. And I wish I could take care of my kids better now that they're grown and on their own. You still want to be there and take care of them. And that's probably the biggest issue I'm going through right now is, I've got a child that's hurting and you can't fix it. Actually, both of them are hurting right now and you just can't fix it. You can't take care of it.
Yeah,
I'm big into nutrition, and so that's me. Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Did I hear from everybody?
Oh, we're all looking at me.
Yeah.
My name is Linda Lowry. I also selected 2 cards like Monica did. Unfortunately, mine was not health related. I wish it was. But the card that I selected was 2 people sitting on a bench because that reminded me of my mom. And that's one of the reasons that I ended up in Branson was to become a caregiver also. And the other one I just selected, it was like serene out in the field, out on the farm. That reminded me of back home.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Thank you.
Excellent.
As you can see with the cards, this is what, when I was talking about the unconscious, this is where it comes into play, right? If I would have just asked you to introduce yourself today, I would have probably heard different stories from all of you. But the cards sort of reach in and they touch a place that maybe you weren't expecting to talk about. And it brings us out more, it brings us into the open. And it's a way to kind of help discover yourself. And those of you who are artists here, I know there's at least one, know that it is, art can be the best way to know more about yourself. You can even surprise yourself with it. So thank you so much for sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Okay, back to bolstering our brain, and I want to stress that the brain and she's going to talk a lot about the mind, and I'm going to talk about the brain, but obviously very interchanged, very interlocked here. Why would I have a slide on a moon bolstering when we're talking about the brain? Seems kind of random? Not really, and here's why. There are many, many burdens that affect the body, and when we are under an immune assault, it affects our brain dramatically. There are these little things called stealth viruses, okay? I was telling one fellow this, and he says, well, if I'm going to have a virus, I want a stealth one. But they're little viruses, and they're stealth because they're hard to get at. They go to hidden places, cavitated places like ear canals, tooth canals, that type of thing. And they're really hard to reach. So it takes a real, a fairly sophisticated approach to handle that and to try to kill it off. If you continually eat your food allergens, maybe your food allergen is gluten, maybe it's soy or dairy or corn, or something else. But regardless, food allergens create heat and inflammation anywhere. We usually think about inflammation in places like our joints. But inflammation affects the brain a lot. Okay? We get a hot brain. So we remove allergens, get rid of parasites, and I like to do this thing called a sequential immune upregulation. You can go to the next slide. So then, I won't linger over this, but it's basically what I'm promoting here is an anti-inflammatory diet. Okay? And so it's very interesting that seizures are something that we're all familiar with, and it's a brain function issue. Before Dilantin came out, I think it was in the 30s, the medication Dilantin came out. The therapy of choice was an anti-inflammatory diet, and it was highly effective. But when people could take a pill, why do the anti-inflammatory diet, right? When you can just pop a pill. But the reality is the anti-inflammatory diet has so many other far-ranging effects. We have one of our patients, but she's a good friend, north of Springfield, and she was having some severe MS symptoms to the point where she was tripping over things, and it was to the point where she really had to do something about it. She's someone who had a bakery, very talented baker, and so she went to an alternative doctor, and he told her, if you really want to try to get after this, try going grain-free. Not just gluten-free, but grain-free. So she was desperate. Desperation does something for us, doesn't it? It gives us leverage. I think it was Archimedes says, if you give me the long enough lever, I'll move the world. So she had leverage. She had to change. Something had to be different. So she went grain-free. She did it so strongly, she totally changed her business. She made her business grain-free. And within 1 month, were her symptoms totally gone in 1 month? Within 1 month, her symptoms were totally gone. And so what does that tell you? It tells you that the inflammation in the brain, the heat in the brain calmed down so much by getting rid of her food sensitivities. And I don't just want to talk about food sensitivities, but I want to talk about acidity. Grains in general create an acid ash in the body. When she got rid of that, what a difference it made for her. Okay? Next slide. This is something that, paper that I handed around, this is part of what I do with that brain assessment. We have questionnaires, and then we have some different testing that we do to look at those different lobes of the brain, different parts of the brain and their function, and determine how yours is working. Next slide. And each part has its own neurotransmitter, expression of weakness, function, and specific nutritional need. Next slide. And finally, these are one more step after this one, but we use these different kinds of assessment tools that tell us how the brain is working. In many cases, it seems kind of unsophisticated, but honestly, some of these questionnaires that have been really well researched, they ask the right questions, and it will tell us, how your brain is functioning. Go ahead to the next slide. And then, finally, this often isn't necessary, but in some cases, we actually do order a blood test, and we find out how much serotonin you might have, or dopamine, or that type of thing. So, next slide, please. The main point I want to stress here is that let me preface this by saying I value medicine. That was a nurse as an example. I value medicine. Medicine has probably saved my life at one point or another, and maybe saved my wife's life, helped her child. So I value medicine. It works really well for crisis situations, for the most part. But where it doesn't work so well is when we have a chronic, ongoing concern, chronic, ongoing health problem. And what I want you to understand is that in many situations, medication for the brain, whether it's for depression, OCD, or this type of thing, it's not the right thing. Now, I'm not saying that it never is the right thing. There are times when it's vital, okay? But there are many times when it isn't, and here's why. As an example, serotonin and dopamine are two of the neurotransmitters in the brain. Too much serotonin or too little dopamine results in an I don't care attitude. But too much dopamine or too little serotonin results in obsessiveness, moodiness, and inflexibility. So, what happens if you get too much dopamine, you get too much serotonin, and that affects the dopamine and drops it too far? They have a relationship there. One goes up, the other goes down. So, what if you find the serotonin is low, and you give more serotonin or a medication that mandates and demands more serotonin, it's going to very likely offset things. It's going to create a little bit of an imbalance there. So the reason I like to try nutrition, herbs, glandulars, oils, that type of thing first, is because that fosters change. It nourishes it. It encourages change in your brain. It doesn't demand it. And so, have you ever tried to force a little kid to do something? It's frustrating, isn't it? There's times we have to. But don't we get much better results when we can just encourage and foster change with them? And the same way goes with our body. Next slide. These are the 5 parts of the brain that I'm going to be talking about. So go ahead. So the deep limbic system, the part of the brain that I was talking to you about before, the hypothalamus, I love the slide because this is really what it does. It helps people move from survival to thrival. Big difference there. Big difference between I have to get up this morning. Oh, I've got to pay my taxes. I really need to go work out. I guess I really should have a salad. Aren't those weak statements? Don't they just... They're not really having to go to work. Boy, that's inspiring, isn't it? Got to pay my bills. Boy, that's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. But what about moving from that to thrival, where I am going to go to work today and I'm going to learn something different that I've never learned before? You see the difference in that statement? Mm-hmm. Or I have decided to embark on an exercise class at the Y with Monica because I understand that is going to have an impact on how I feel. And as an aside, I have to focus on Monica for a second. How many people know Monica in here? I know Monica, she does. Okay.
They could get to know me.
You can get to know her. The New England Journal of Medical Association says that's a hoity-toity medical journal, right? I mean, this is the medical journal, New England Journal of Medicine. It states that exercise on a regular basis, 5 times a week as an example, is more effective than Prozac for depression. Okay, so if you could put exercise in a capsule, and you could go exercise, wow, how cool is that, right? Mm-hmm. So most people, what do you think most people tell me when they come to my office and I suggest exercise? What do you think most people tell me? Don't have time. Has anybody else said that?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Has anybody here ever squandered time? Has anybody here ever sat at your desk and stared at a project and sat there for 15 minutes realizing that the last 15 minutes had gone by and you didn't do a thing? Has anybody done that? Go exercise, come back, and see how effective you are then. It's not all about how much time you have. You will feel much better if you exercise and then go do something. Monica if you notice her, she's a vibrant person. You know, she had this. What were your cards, Monica?
Running
Running
and a light that with the go.
with the go. Okay. So I'm going to pick on Monica here a little bit because I just gave her a big compliment a minute ago because she is a vibrant person. She's energetic and all that stuff. But by her own admission, she said, "I can't relax." Boy, can I relate to that. Monica's brain needs to learn how to kind of relax and chill out. We would say she has a sympathetic dominant nervous system. Sympathetic, S for speed, speed up. The very opposite from fight or flight or parasympathetic. Okay, she wants to be sped up. She wants to fight the bear or run from the bear. Okay, but on the other side of things, Monica needs to learn to rest and digest. That's the parasympathetic nervous system. Remember that? P for pause. S, sympathetic for speed. So she needs to chill out and relax. So Monica needs minerals. Okay, that's one thing that she needs. Magnesium, calcium, potassium, that type of thing. You wonder where those come from in your diet? Root vegetables. Okay? Root vegetables are in the ground. They make you feel grounded. Sweet potatoes, turnips, beets, that type of thing. But seriously, most of us need minerals. We live in a mineral deficient society. One of the best things I can tell you today, if you go and do this, is go get some gray Celtic salt. Okay? You can find it on Amazon, gray Celtic salt. It's even better, it matches the natural salinity of the body better than pink sea salt.
Himalayan.
So, Himalayan sea salt. And you might say, well, wait a minute, what if I have high blood pressure? Well, typical salt, table salt, has been demineralized. The good has been leached out of it. So, when you have typical table salt, it drives up your blood pressure, right? But when you have something like gray Celtic salt, you keep it on your table and you use about a half a teaspoon a day, it will actually help balance out your blood pressure. You'll enjoy very tasty food and no ill effects with blood pressure. Okay? And the cool thing is it helps pull water into cells. Okay? A lot of people are worried about salt because it accumulates fluid and they get more swelling and edema. But this kind of salt helps actually pull the water into the cell where it needs to be. A happy cell is a puffy, hydrated cell, not a shriveled up prune. Okay? So try that out. Go to Amazon or I think it's Selina, selina.com, Selina. You can find this. Okay, problems with your deep limbic system. Here's what you're going to get. Increased negativity. Anybody have that in here? Decreased motivation, appetite, sleep problems, social isolation, and even decreased or increased sexual response. So if you have a tendency to have decreased motivation or increased negativity, this might be your area. The next slide will tell us what we might do about that. As I mentioned before, increased protein. What were you saying about protein the other day?
Protein molecules are the delivery system between synapses in the brain. So the thing that facilitates communication. They're vital.
St. John's wort. Now the one caveat with St. John's wort is if you're on a blood pressure medication, it'll potentiate those effects. We have to use St. John's wort carefully. It's a great product when it comes from the right source. There's some junk St. John's wort out there, and there's some good quality St. John's wort. But it is effective. All right. Green tea extract. You all can drink that. Okay? Next slide. Was this mine or yours?
This is yours.
Okay. Techniques to balance deep limbic. All right. These are just some things you can do. Kill ants. Autonomic negative thoughts. Or you might say automatic negative thoughts. Cynical, gloomy, complaining. Surround yourself with positive bonding people. Okay. There are people who sucks on our energy. I remember a receptionist that worked not in our office, but she worked in the entryway of the first office that I ever had. And she was the gloomiest person. And people would come upstairs to our office and they would say, "What did you do to that lady?" And we hadn't done a thing to her. But she just was a very gloomy person. And quite honestly, it wasn't any help to our business. She was just a negative person. But people have an energy. They really do. Build your people skills to enhance bonding. I know several people talked about caring for parents, care for children and so forth. One of the ways that we can beat the winter blues is to get outside of ourselves and think about other people. I mean, we don't want to worry about other people, but getting outside of ourselves and thinking about someone else is a good thing. There's always somebody that's got it a little bit worse. Physical exercise, we already touched on. Healthy physical contact. Hugs are good. Next slide. Cingulate system problems. This is the gear shifter of the brain, the cingulate system, and kind of runs between the left and right hemisphere. So if you get stuck on certain thoughts, if you're real rigid, if you automatically say no, the illustration I used the other day is when I get maybe a little tired after a week of work, and Angie's trying to plan our social calendar for the weekend. Hey, honey, do you want to go out on Friday? No. Do you want to invite so-and-so over for supper Sunday? No. It's hardly out of her mouth, and the first thought on my mind is no. So I've had to kind of wait 5 seconds before I say no. But seriously, if I catch myself doing that, I realize, I've learned to listen to myself a little better than I used to. Okay? Road rage, eating disorders, argumentative. These are cingulate system problems. Next slide. This will tell us how to handle it. You're going to see St. John's wort a few times here. L-tryptophan. Foods rich in tryptophan or tryptophan are chicken, turkey, salmon, beef. A lot of protein there, right? Eggs, potatoes, milk. And then there's some products that I use in my office from Standard Process and Medihurt that work very well. There's actually one on there that I didn't put on. It's called OPC Synergy, and that works. It makes the right and left brain communicate very nicely. So, next slide. So, here's what to do practically. Notice when you're stuck, distract yourself and return to the problem later. Has anybody been trying to figure out a problem solve, a certain problem they had, and the longer you stayed with the problem, the more impossible it seemed, right? I just can't get away from this problem. What am I going to do? Angie called me the other night, and I was working on this PowerPoint, and I was trying to change the background on it, and I couldn't change the background. And she called me, and it wasn't her fault, but I was kind of slightly irritated because she interrupted my work and my thought process. But it turned out to be a good thing because she said, well, I'm going to pick you up in 15 minutes and we're going to go out to eat with the kids. So I didn't say no. In that time frame, she interrupted my stuck thought, and in that time frame I figured out how to change the background. So if you're stuck on something, go to one of Monica's classes, or go to our friend Keneal, and change what you're doing. Do something different. Think before saying no. Seek counsel from others. Exercise. Next slide. So the basal ganglia, another part of the brain. And what is this? The effects of this when it's not functioning well are anxiety and nervousness, panic, muscle tension, tendency to predict the worst, low motivation. In veterans, I put that in there because many PTSD issues come from the basal ganglia in the brain. Okay, so I don't like to focus on what goes bad. I like to know that there's something we can do for it. So let's go to the next slide. And here's some of the solutions. Some of them are going to be the very same thing that you've already seen. Increasing your general protein intake. Increase your food That's not correct there. General protein intake is what I was trying to say. Not increasing your overall food intake, but increasing frequency of eating in smaller amounts. Okay? Why does that affect things? Why does that make a difference? It keeps blood sugar more balanced. All right? The person that's the most anxious is going to be the person who waits till they're starved, they're stressed out in their bodies, and they grab a Snicker bar and a cup of coffee. What does that do? So coffee drives up the caffeine level, right? Drinking coffee is a little bit like this. Say you rode a horse 100 miles, and he's worn out, he's sweating, he's panting, he's exhausted, and he stumbles and falls, and he's just like that. You take out a whip and you say, come on, horsey, go another 10, you can do it. I just got 10 more miles. So that's what caffeine can be to the body and to the brain. And then, of course, sugar from the Snicker bar is just going to rev up and make your blood sugar be like a roller coaster. And when your blood sugar is like a roller coaster, what else is like a roller coaster? Your mood. Okay. So, green tea extract. More products here that I'm recommending. Lavender essential oil. You're using essential oil, so who else uses it? Yeah? You use it? Where did we hear about lavender being diffused in a school for children with ADHD or learning disabilities?
Yeah, it made a huge impact.
Yeah.
Really?
It also is used in bird units for skin healing.
Yeah.
I diffuse it every night.
Yeah. Lavender is very calming. I think we tend to think this. Raise your hand if you think this is true. Do you tend to think that if you're too calm, you don't think well? You ever thought that way? That you kind of got to have your cup of coffee so you can be alert?
Yeah.
So you're a little bit more on edge so you can think well?
That's
Well-
the phrase, I have to have my coffee
Before you do
I
whatever.
that.
So there is a sense in which we don't want to be groggy, right? But I was using this illustration the other day, and when I worked for the Red Cross, I was a first responder, and one of the things they taught us to do was when we came on the scene of an emergency, we were to walk to that scene. Why was that? It was so we would stay calm, because if we got too excited and we ran to that place, several things could happen. One, we didn't really have time to assess the situation and look at it globally and see everything that's there. There could have been a potential danger, electrical danger, fire danger, something like that we could make matters worse by just running into it. But it slowed the brain down. It slowed the thought process down enough where we could actually make smart decisions. Okay? Test anxiety, it's called that because it makes it hard to take tests and you don't do as well. So, next slide. So here's some practical help. Guided imagery. Angie was she still is really a life coach, certified life coach. And it's really cool stuff. It's probably, do you do some guided imagery stuff?
I have in the past, but I don't use it
Okay.
now. But earlier in my career, I used to use it a lot.
Okay. Regardless, it's something you can do with yourself, probably, like a little self-help type of thing. Close your eyes and project into the future 30 years or so, maybe 40 years. And turn yourself from whatever you are right now into the person you will be in 30 years. And talk to the person you are now from that perspective. So for me, let's say I'm 45 years old. All of a sudden I'm thinking about being 70 years old. My children are raised. They're away from home. My practice is 1 day a week because I choose it to be. What do I want to tell the man who's 45 years old? Work every minute so you don't have time with your kids? Probably not. But that's the type of thing guided imagery does. Diaphragmatic breathing. What happens when we breathe from our chest instead of our stomach and our diaphragm? What do you say?
I said it's much more healthy.
When we breathe from our stomach, it's much more healthy.
Diaphragm.
From our diaphragm, right. So we don't want to just, what I'm getting at is chest breathing is shallow breathing. And that's what we tend to do when we become stressed. Okay? Or we're just, it's easy when I'm up here to chest breathe. Just slow breaths. But when we're more relaxed, we'll notice that we're belly breathing. Belly breathing has a profound effect. The reason it does is because it oxygenates things so much better. You can do a pre and post oxygen sensor test and find out that it really does. Meditation, dealing with the conflict, don't avoid it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, there's no way around conflict, right? There's no way around our problems. And a lot of times we think there is, and so we, try to sidestep here, sidestep there. But usually if we just face it and work through it, the key to most things in terms of psychology is to work through it, not to avoid it, not to run from it, to face it, deal with it, work through it.
And again, these ants, kill the ants. And autonomic negative thoughts get handled with accurate thinking. Sometimes our thoughts, if we could hear ourselves say them, we would laugh at ourselves. Because it's kind of like that. I don't know if this is part of the unconscious thing, Tennille, or not, but the things that we tell ourselves in the back of our mind that is really negative, if we could hear ourselves, it would stop us in our tracks. So one thing that I suggest to people sometimes, when I recognize that their health issues are coming so much from their emotional state, is to start reprogramming the master computer, which is the brain. So you got a master computer, you were born with it. You didn't really get an instruction manual per se, but we've all been programmed by ourselves, by other people, by our surroundings. Sometimes we have to reprogram the computer. And one way I suggest doing that is taking an index card at night and writing down 5 questions. One of the questions might be, what am I looking forward to tomorrow? Another one might be, what am I looking forward to in 6 months? What about my job tomorrow am I going to accomplish that will make me feel really good? What do I like about myself right now? If I continue on the course I'm on, blah, 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 that type of thing. Very positive questions to ask yourself. So when you ask yourself a question, you get an answer. If you ask yourself, why does this always happen to me? What kind of answer do you get?
For me.
For me. Because you're a dodo head. You don't know any better. Things like this, that's what happens. Next slide.
So, Dr. Tompkins and I, we address similar things, but in very different ways. And so I'm going to talk a bit more about things you can do in your interpersonal world, in terms of not so much brain, but mind, and also dealing with people. And all these things are easier said than done, and I realize that. But I'll just go over them a little bit and hopefully help reacquaint you with them if you've lost them somewhere along the way. It's really vital to try to work through anxiety and depression in your life is to really practice self-compassion. And what do I mean by this? It means treat yourself well. Love yourself. Most people that suffer from depression have negative self-talk. That's what we call it in the field. But basically, it's what you say to yourself is cruel and mean. Oh, stupid you, or you look so fat in those pants. Are you really going to go out in that today? Or, I'm a terrible mom. I just yelled at my son. Oh, I'm so awful. I'm going to screw him up for life. There are all these things that we say to ourselves in our mind, and we're just harsh. We're cruel. And one of the things, self-compassion doesn't mean that we don't accept that we do things wrong. It means that we realistically say, okay, I'm not perfect. I made a mistake there, but it's okay. I'll work on it. You know, no flogging, no beating. Don't rake yourself over the coals. Those things cause depression. Those things increase anxiety and stress. It's very, very important to try to really cultivate self-acceptance. I am who I am. I love myself. And one of the things that's wonderful about self-compassion is that it takes into account who you are as an individual. And a lot of times what we do this time of year, or when we're trying to change ourselves, is we say, I want to be like this person. I see this person. Well, I'm trying to think of an example. I want to be like Mother Teresa. I want to dedicate my life to serving the poor. Well, I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm Sunil Ness. So the things I love to do, my value comes from other things. And accepting what your value is, right? Like, Monica, you help people get healthier, right? That's where you find your meaning. And if you try to help people get healthier through accounting, you'd be miserable. You might make a lot more money, I don't know, but you'd be miserable. So a lot of times we try to be somebody we're not. And our best self is the self we really are, who we are at our fundamental core. Strengthening your support systems. Dr. Tompkins talked about this. You know, really trying to reduce the amount of time you spend with people that stress you out. And if they do stress you out, say, look, set a boundary. You know, I'm sorry, I know you're struggling, I know you're going through a really hard time right now, but I can't, you know, it's too much for me. You know, see a therapist, or whatever you need to say to the people in your life that will drag you down and drain you. And then be around the people that build you up, the people who see who you are, the people who love you for who you are, the people who enhance those qualities in yourself that you love the most. Those are the people to spend more time with. Identifying triggers. Okay, so trying to figure out what just made me feel sad all of a sudden. I just feel terrible. Where did it come from? When you know what it is that sets you off, you can manage it better. It may be that that thing that sets you off is not something you can change or fix. And a lot of times it's true. Like you walk past, I don't know, you walk past the picture on your mantle of your aunt who died in a car accident a couple years ago. All of a sudden you're feeling sad. Of course you're feeling sad. But you know when you see that picture you're going to feel sad. So you can work on trying to remember the good things. That's just an example. But there are a lot of little things that trigger us. Engage in something you're passionate about. I cannot emphasize this enough. Find the thing that you love to do and try to do it. Doesn't mean you have to do it for a living, but do it for yourself, right? Read a book. You know, David Bowie recently died, and there's been a lot of quotes about things. He said, the interviewer asked him, what are you most passionate about? And he said, reading. Well, that's a nice one. If you're passionate about reading, give yourself some time to read. If you're passionate about art, do your art. If you're passionate about conversation, have those conversations. Try to find those things in your life more and more. Nurture yourself. Nurturing yourself goes right in line with all these other things. Setting boundaries with people in your life that drain you. Defending your time. You know, defending the time for yourself, especially those of you who are caregivers, caretakers. You got to have that time for yourself. It's vital. And then, of course, find a great therapist. I'm of the mind, and I am a therapist. I've had many years of therapy myself. Most therapists do. That's not a common fact that most people know, but we all do. And you don't have to be crazy to have a therapist. It's about self-enhancement. It's about increasing self-knowledge. It's about finding yourself more deeply. In this area of the world, there's a lot of stigma. And there's a lot of stigma everywhere in America, but especially in the Midwest, right? Therapy's for people who can't deal with their problems. Well,
True that.
you know, that isn't true at all. Therapy is for people who are dealing with their problems. It is one way that people do deal with their problems, and it is a highly effective way to deal with your problems. And so I like to, when I give talks, to just say, don't feel stigmatized by it. It's about self-enhancement. I come from New York, right? And everybody's in therapy in New York. If you're not in New York, they're like, you say you're not in therapy, they're like, what? You need to get a therapist. So our culture really, 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 really affects the way we think about self-enhancement. And there are more than one way to strengthen yourself, and therapy is one of them. It's one of them that I happen to engage in, and I think it's very important. But there are other ways too.
Okay, we're almost to the end of these brain parts here, but anybody have a short attention span here? What did you just say? Prefrontal cortex. Chronic lateness, poor time management. Anybody have that? Disorganization, procrastination. That's the prefrontal cortex. Next slide. So here's some things we can do. I already talked about OPC synergy. L-tyrosine or N-acetyltyrosine, which is amino acids. Tuna omega-3, it's a fish oil. Fish oil, the brain loves fish oil. Adrenal complex. Monica was talking about not being able to relax. The adrenal gland is the gland that helps us rev up to face the bear, okay, the grizzly. And so we want to fight or flee. Well, a lot of times I'll go over this in my talks. I do it frequently in my practice too. But how does your body react? Let's say that you were having a meal with your favorite person. The lights were down low. The soft music was on. And you were totally chilled out. And then a knock came on the door. And the door flies open. The lights come on, full blast. And a guy comes in and he's waving an AK-47 around like this, hollering and screaming. But what does your body do when that's the case? Well, the adrenal gland kicks into overdrive. Whether you were eating filet mignon or chopped liver, it doesn't matter at this point because you lose your appetite. Norepinephrine takes blood from the digestion and sends it to the skeletal muscles. So you can fight or flee. Now, picture now that guy with the AK-47 isn't really a guy with an AK-47. He is somebody who is someone or something that is a threat to your calm and peaceful existence. And that someone or something could be there 24/7. I don't know. Or it might be just at your work. It might be the person that sits next to you in the cubicle at work. Or it might be some financial situation. Or it might be a person in your family. It could be anything. But that person, the way your body reacts to that person is almost like a guy with an AK-47. Okay? Same type of thing. So, like I said, blood leaves the digestion. Cortisol goes into overdrive. If that situation happens long enough, you're going to tend to get on a cortisol weight gain fat around the middle. Your sleep is going to get disrupted. How can you sleep with it when there's a guy with an AK-47 there, right? So when melatonin is supposed to go up and cortisol is supposed to drop, you have inverted chemistry. Your cortisol goes up, making sure he's not there, and the melatonin goes down. So when you try to sleep at night, you're vigilant. You're watching for him. Right? Another thing cortisol does, it acts like the body's natural cortisone. So people that are stressed often are fighting knee pain and joint pain. Okay? Because their cortisol is so depleted. It's really worked hard. And then, not that anybody would care about this in here, but our sex life tanks. The body sees it this way. Why would you ever want to bring a baby into the world when there's a guy with an AK-47 like this? Okay? That's the way our brain looks at it. When there's stress, we don't want to have a romantic evening with our significant other. Okay? Next slide. Temporal lobes. I think this is the last one. Aggression. Dark or violent thoughts. I saved this for last because it's kind of the darkest one. Sensitivity to lights, word finding problems, reading difficulties, etc. So what do we do for that? Next slide. Again, reduce carbs and increase proteins, increase minerals like we talked before, tuna omegas, Eliminate stimulants like coffee and nicotine. And again, next slide.
Okay, so how can psychotherapy help? Cultivate self-awareness, right? The more aware we are of ourselves, the more we accept ourselves usually, the more we can move through the problems in our lives that we face. Life is hard, right? It wasn't meant to be easy, and it isn't, right? There are moments in our lives that are really, really dark, and there are moments that are beautiful and light and full of joy. And if you are solid in yourself, you can move through them as best you can, right? You don't fall apart. You're going to be sad, you're going to be hit, but you'll be all right. It brings you closer to yourself and the core of who you are as a unique human being. So I can't stress this enough. Knowing ourselves, being close to who we are, being our best self in the world is important. Self-acceptance. Psychotherapy helps you learn to accept yourself. It helps fight the negative voices. It uses your own voice, in fact, to fight the negative voices. Psychotherapy, one of the things about it that's wonderful is that it doesn't matter, like, you don't have to agree with me. I can be your therapist, or someone can be your therapist, and we could be totally and completely different people. We could handle our problems in 1,000 different ways that don't mix or mesh. But psychotherapy helps you find the way that you handle the problem. It's not my way, right? I'm not going to come in and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to change your life. I'm going to help you find what works for you. Even if it's something I would never do myself. It basically makes the internal congruent with the external. So who we are inside matches who we are in the world with other people in our everyday life.
And it works. I've had it. I went through a tough change in my life in my 20s, and I had some, probably a year, and I'm sure I could use more. Nobody needs to comment on that. But it is effective, because this thing we call our brain, this thing we call our mind, we just need help knowing how to work with it. So how can Tompkins Wellness Center help? How can what I do, what does my work with? Well, we can assess which neurotransmitters are weak or underfunctioning. So is it serotonin, is it dopamine, or is it acetylcholine or something else? It's a little sluggish. Doesn't mean that you're going to get a label. Doesn't mean that we're going to call you clinically depressed or OCD or anything like that. We're not trying to label you. We just want to tune up the car. If that makes sense. Address underlying nutritional deficiencies, and I'm going to use herbs, supplements, glandulars, that type of thing. And then assist with deeper intervention when needed, using acupuncture, emotional release, or chiropractic. I had a woman come to me a couple years ago. When I do my intake form, I have a line of about 10 different emotions that I ask about. It's everything from sadness, depression, worry, angry, nervous, frustrated, panic. Long list like this. I think there was one that wasn't circled with her. She was a mess. In a month's time, she had only one circle. From having 9 circled to 1. A month's time with some treatment. And heeding some good, solid, take care of yourself type guidance. Big difference. So it makes a difference. And I think this is our last slide. Next slide. Yes. And so now we're down to the questions. Don't be shy. Yes.
How do you assess the neurotransmitters?
How do we do that?
Yes.
We're really looking at the different lobes of the brain, and so there's a fairly sophisticated questionnaire for each part of the brain that asks you similar type questions, but the ones that focus on that part of the brain, and we find out where you're the most imbalanced. We're all imbalanced. I mean, think of it this way: a plane takes off for Hawaii from LA. The plane is rarely totally on target. But he leaves from LA and he lands in Honolulu, right? So we all have imbalance. Sometimes we're a little left of center, sometimes we're a little right. But is there, maybe the normal is 5 units to the left and 5 units to the right, but there's one area where you're 15 units to the right. We need to know what one that is. And so we do that with some questionnaires. And then I do some applied kinesiology type muscle testing, and I use energetic points on the head that correlate to all those areas that I mentioned: cingulate, temporal lobe, prefrontal cortex, deep limbic, and such. And then if there is a weakness, I will find I like to test a nutritional product and see maybe there's something that you need, or is it protein, or is it something different. So that's what that looks like. Does that answer your question?
So when you're looking at the different parts of the brain, are you putting like those electrodes on there or something?
No.
How are you?
No, there's no electrodes. It's basically. Have you ever had muscle testing in the past?
No.
No. You ever been to alternative medicine
Do a
type of guy?
demonstration so they understand.
I'd like to do a demo, but I don't know if I have a product that would negate the weakness. But
Well, we can do it negative thoughts too. Remember,
who wants to be a demo? Do you want to be a demo for me? Want to come up to the front? Or do you want somebody else to do it?
Somebody else.
You want to do it?
I'll do it.
Somebody else do it? You come on up.
There you go.
Come on up.
Here's your demo person. That soup next to me, they'll tell you I don't want.
So before I do this, I want to understand kind of what the principle behind this is. This isn't voodoo medicine. This is testing using energetic points on the body. And the way I would think of these is a little bit like a breaker in a breaker box. Okay? If you're working in your kitchen and all of a sudden the stove goes off, what do? Well, if it's just like that, you're probably going to go out to your garage or wherever it is, and you're going to find the breaker and you're going to flip it back. And then if it keeps going off, you're going to say, well, something's the matter here. We've got to fix this whole circuit. So our body is energetic. That's what I want you to get. We're energetic beings. So I'm using this as a diagnostic tool, all right, to find out what part of her brain might need help, all right? Doesn't mean, I want to be clear, like if I tested a liver point, which obviously isn't part of her brain, if I tested the liver point and it was weak, it doesn't mean she has cirrhosis of the liver. It doesn't mean she has liver cancer. I would never ever say that. It just means there's an under-functioning of that organ. And the reason I love this testing so much is because there's this thing called the 2/3 rule, we call it. In traditional medicine, a disease process has to be 2/3 along the path of progression for it to show up in lab work, in general. Isn't that unbelievable? 2/3 along the path of progression. So by the time you get that feedback, whoa, it's like finding out you need a head gasket replacement on your car instead of just the oil change. So now you're stuck with a $2,000 bill instead of a $50 bill. So this provides a way of assessing things in your, not just the brain, but the whole body, that we can get to it before it's going to show up in lab work. All right, so Pat, I'll have you stand right here. Can everybody see like this? All right. So I'm going to have her keep her, is this a good shoulder? Here, a good strong arm? Don't have any problems with this arm? A little pain in that one. We'll use this one. And I'll have you take your watch off just so it doesn't get in our way. And so the first thing I like to do is I want to know that we have a good muscle and that it will test weak when it's supposed to be weak and strong when it's supposed to be strong. So resist me when I push. Okay. So she has a solid lock. I would not want to get in an argument with her. Okay. She just there's no stutter. Okay. Her muscle locks. But I'm going to go to we'll find out if she's a good testee here. I'm going to go to the muscle belly of the deltoid. And I'm going to pinch what we call the muscle spindle cells of the deltoid and cause an inhibiting effect on that muscle. Hold. And it went right down. And I didn't have, right? It was, totally weakened. So that's just practical neurology is what we just did there. We created an inhibition of the nerves that supply that muscle. Her muscle didn't all of a sudden get weak, or small, I should say. So now I know and she knows what a weak muscle feels like on her body. Okay? So hold again. That will only last one time when I do that inhibition test. So I'm going to come up here, first of all, to this point right here. Hold. Okay. So Pat, hold. Pat's master computer, the master computer of the whole brain, is weak. Okay? Now, you could look at it two ways. You could say, ooh, that's bad. Or you could say, wow, if I get that strong, I'm going to feel a whole lot better. Okay? That does not mean that she doesn't think well and she's dumb or anything like that. It just means that she's kind of more in survival mode. She's not in thrival mode. So we want her to move to thrival mode. So if we had something like, anybody have, I don't have anything with me, but a really good fish oil. Anybody have that? This is a Young Living essential oil spray. I doubt this is going to make a difference, but we can try it. Now, I'm going to have her hold on to something. This is what a lot of people don't understand. I want to ask you a question. How is it that you can be in the back of Walmart? Do you shop at Walmart? Walmart? I'm sorry. How is it you can be in Walmart and get a cell phone call on your cell phone?
Because of the towers?
Because of the towers. But isn't it amazing? I mean, those waves of energy pass through glass, concrete, aisles of food, aisles of whatever, and you could be back by the freezer section and you can talk to your daughter in the Philippines if you want to. Right? So how does that happen? It's through electromagnetic energy, basically. So a product, let's say it's a nutritional product, it's going to have energy, and here's how it has energy. A plant, let's say it's a plant. Let's say it's St. John's wort, which is a plant. It grew from the sun. Photosynthesis converted a little seed into a plant. You took that plant, you cut it up, you dried it, put it into a capsule form, and you put it in your body to feel better. So if it's inside a bottle, if that St. John's wort is inside a bottle, and she's holding on to it, the energy from that capsule transfers through the bottle, and it has an energy. Okay? So does everybody kind of get that? That it has an energy to it. All right? And if people say, well, this is weird. Well, I say, well, getting a cell phone call in the back of Walmart's weird, isn't it? You know, really? It's pretty amazing. We just don't think of it that way. So I don't know. I would not give her this product. It's all I have right here. I wouldn't give her this product for hypothalamus necessarily. But I'm just going to test it. So it may not work. I don't know. So hold. Okay. And hold. Okay. No. And it doesn't. All right. So the question is, what would work? So her hypothalamus is weak. I'm going to test these other points. Hold. Hold. The cingulate area is weak. Probably a lot of them are going to be weak because the master computer is weak. You know, for her, all it may take is just 2 or 3 things to really get her feeling better. Hold.
No, Dr. Hopkins, it's something
Yes.
you're not taking into account
Tell me that.
for herself and myself.
Okay?
We're older, we're in survival mode, right?
Hold. Hold. In a sense. But I would say that thrival looks different when you're 40 than when you're 80. Okay? You're not trying to change. You're doing different things when you're not 80. I'm not saying that. She's not 80. But when you're 80, I'm using an extreme number. When you're 80, you're not doing the things that you were doing when you're 40. You know, you're being. You're not so much doing, you're being, right? So what I'm driving at is you can still thrive. You just do it in a very different way. You know what I'm saying? Your body's not running marathon.
That's a factor for us.
Sure, but it doesn't have to affect this. I will tell you from testing this, that does not affect it. I think, if you don't mind me analyzing, but I think what you expressed when you did your little card today, I think that's having a big impact on what you're doing. So, it is. So, I'll just test a couple other points. Hold. Okay. So that's the basal ganglia. She has no strength. And this is somebody whose regular muscle test is solid. I mean, it's just solid. I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Hold. I mean, it's solid. There's no give. All right. So when I test this point, hold, and it's just nothing. It's really, really weak. So the good news is that she can feel a lot better. And then what it will do is it will put her in the place to work through some of this stuff. She might, I'm speaking hypothetically, she might go see Tennille, or she might do something different, but she'll ultimately be able to work through it better if she gets on a few things that strengthen neurotransmitters.
Interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. Did that illustrate adequately for you, or are you still left with more questions in your head? No, this lady here.
No, I think so. Although,
Okay.
what about those commercials that you see where they're trying to sell the shoe inserts?
I'm not sure what you're referring
And
to.
they do some of the similar
Yeah, I've seen
tests
that.
that you did to
Yeah.
her, where you can't you can pull her arm down
Right.
easily, and then they put you in those shoe inserts, and now you can't pull her arm down.
Yes, so what that's doing, and
Yeah.
that's kind of along the same idea.
Yep.
That's the same idea. That's the reason I wanted to know that she had a strong muscle to begin with,
Yeah.
right? If she had a weak muscle to begin with, obviously my test wouldn't have made any difference.
Yep.
But what that test is showing is that that person's structural integrity is compromised to the extent that it's affecting how they test. So you strengthen the medial and longitudinal arches of the foot, and all of a sudden they're strong, they're solid.
That is true.
So yeah.
Yeah, and just as a testimony to what I've gone through this myself, and so in some down times, tested, and my arm was flying down most of the time, and so my little center point up here was in need of a lot of help. So we did do a lot of the supplements, and then in retesting down the road, I didn't need all of those things. So you really can tell, and I can tell when, say, my thyroid is needing some help. And I mean, it works. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. So
It does.
it's a good avenue.
Any other questions, comments, questions for Tennille? Anything?
You're talking about protein, eating protein, and having anxiety and things. Are there carbohydrates, the ones that are better for you, with anxiety and relaxing, serotonin?
Carbs tend to, if you're talking about grains as an example, carbs tend to imbalance blood sugar. Just generally speaking. So, like if you're diabetic, what they're going to tell you is have frequent protein, because that's going to keep blood sugar balanced. And as we said before, if your blood sugar is kind of like this, your mood and emotion is going to be like that. But,
So the Olive Garden's out of
Olive Garden salad is great. Like those kind of carbs are good. Vegetables and that type of thing are obviously really, really good. They're considered carbs, but they're not simple carbs. They're not processed carbs. It's the processed simple carbs that make it so that we don't use blood sugar well. And they actually make our anxiety worse. Yeah. Yeah, good question though. It's not that we don't need carbs. I don't want to give that impression. We need fats, we need carbs, and we need protein. Do you want to add anything more, Neil?
Just in case you're interested or know anybody who's interested, I am going to start 2 art therapy groups in February, probably towards the end of February. One is for adults and one is for adolescents. So if you're interested or you know of anyone who's interested, I have flyers over here. Please spread the word.
What does that look like? How does that?
Well, usually, typically an art therapy group will be about 5 to 8 people. I usually don't like more than 8. And we'll meet for an hour and a half, and we work on art, and then we process it. So just like we processed your card today, you create artwork. Sometimes I provide a theme, sometimes I leave it up to you. And we make the work, and then we talk about it and we explore how it connects to us, to our inner life. And as the group gets closer, usually people open up more, start to develop more honesty, and real issues get worked on. So,
Do you have to be an artist?
no, actually, art therapy is one of the reasons why it's so effective is that it gets to your unconscious, and you don't have to have any skills whatsoever. Colors, shapes, lines, forms. You don't have to be an artist. It's just about expression. And your work isn't looked at or judged in the way it would be if you were having an art show, say. It's whatever you create is accepted for what it is. You can make the most hideous thing you could even think of in your mind, you could make it, and everyone in the group will accept it and try to understand it based on what it means, not on what it looks like. If you're interested, flyers, just take one and call me if you might want to try it out.
What do you charge for your classes?
They're $20 a session, and they include materials,
So you do painting,
all kinds of things.
all kinds of things.
All kinds of things. Usually mix it up. Sculpture, painting, drawing. Yeah.
That's pretty neat to have that here in good old Branson.
Yeah, I'm the only one. There's myself and one other art therapist in Springfield. She actually went to the same graduate school I did. But other than that, we're the only ones in this whole region. So.
Very good. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice to have you. It was a small group, but we had a nice class. Thank you.
It was good.